Welcome to the next edition of the Connor and Heffernan Show. My name is Mark, my co-host Montana here. Um, so we are getting closer, ever so closer to the football season getting here. NFL teams have already have already started their summer workouts and stuff like that. So I think it's a really good time, for us both to talk about our top five quarterbacks going into the season this year. It was a pretty competitive league last year, but I think the top five stayed the same for most everybody. Um, I'm just gonna start it off. Patrick Mahomes is my number one quarterback going into the year. My number two is Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts looked absolutely incredible last year, leading the Eagles to the Super Bowl. They ultimately lost, but I think the Eagles could be potentially better this year, and I think they can take care of business. I've got Hurts at two, Burrow at three. Joe Burrow has done really well with the Bengals. He he's a really good pocket passer. He's got weapons on the offensive side of the ball to get the ball to. Another really good quarterback. My number four is Josh Allen. Josh Allen has taken the Bills to another level since he's gotten there. I think the Bills can be quite dangerous if Josh Allen is healthy throughout the year. And then my number five, I might have to go with Justin Herbert. I think Justin Herbert is poised for a pretty big year with the Chargers. Like the Chargers didn't have a great record last year, but the Chargers have a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. I think the Chargers this year, if everything falls into place, Herbert stays healthy, all their offensive weapons stay healthy, their offensive line defense, everybody stays healthy. I think the Chargers can make a little bit of noise. That's my top five. I think it's a pretty decent top five. Um, and then outside of my top five, you know, I've got, I'm going to have to put, Lamar Jackson up there, Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence, led the Jaguars to the playoffs this last year. And the Jaguars are actually kind of dangerous come playoff time because they were really hot. And then Lamar Jackson with the Ravens. Now that it looks like he is staying in Baltimore. What is your top five, man? I'm kind of interested to hear what yours is, if it's any different than mine.
Yeah, so we definitely have a couple of names that are similar. I think I have two. No, I have one that's not on your list. I have one name that is not on your list. That's kind of the most maybe controversial pick, but we got the same number one, Patrick Mahomes. He's the best of the best. I see him being the best, maybe mostly the rest of his career potentially. If he stays healthy, I'm pretty sure he'll be that quarterback, that Tom Brady type of like level above everybody else. I do think that'll be him. So that's my number one. My number two is where it gets extremely controversial, and I feel like this is a pick that could get some of our viewers talking because it is the reason I am putting him at number two is because of what I believe he will do this season. It's not so much what he did last season, but it's what I think he will do. At my number two spot, I've got Lamar Jackson. And I guess for me, I really think that he is that quarterback. I think that his balanced skill set is extremely dangerous, and I think he has the most balanced skill set in the NFL. And I have it at my number 2 spot. I think he's going to go off this season, and I think if all goes well, we could see that team maybe getting close to a conference championship. So I really do think that Baltimore team is going to be the real deal, and because of Lamar Jackson. I've got Jalen Hurts at my number 3 spot for all the same reasons you said. The one reason he's at 3 and not 2 for me is I've got to see another season. We saw a really big jump from his rookie year to his second year, but I guess for me, I just need to see another jump, at least a little bit, to put him above Lamar Jackson. And then at my number 4 spot, I've got Josh Allen. He's a great quarterback. He's been a great quarterback. He's made that Bills team so great and fun to watch. So he's my number 4. And then I've got to give my number 5 to Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow's great. I think he's a fantastic quarterback. Obviously, AFC champion, Super Bowl contender. He's been there. He's a really, really good quarterback, and he's a really young quarterback. I don't know if he's the youngest quarterback we have on here, but I think no, Jalen Hurts is. Jalen Hurts would be the youngest, I believe. But Burrow's right there. Burrow's got plenty of career left. So Burrow's obviously, I have Burrow winning 1 to 2 Super Bowls. My only thing is I don't think that will be with the Bengals. I do think we'll see Burrow end up on another team and maybe have more success. But that's my top 5. And then right on the outside looking in, I've got Justin Herbert and I have Trevor Lawrence as my outside looking in. And then I'll go a third one. I've got this strange level of confidence in Aaron Rodgers to at least have a statistically successful season. So I've still got Aaron Rodgers in my top 10, and he's probably like my 8th spot, I'd say, something like that. So who knows? But that's my list. I guess. Do you think, my question for you, because Lamar Jackson is such an interesting pick to put at number 2, do you think there's any way he could play up to being in the top 5 or at number 2? Or do you think I'm living in a fantasy world with that one?
Oh, absolutely. When the guy is healthy, he's an absolute cheat code on the field. He has breakaway speed. He can get away from most anybody. He has a pretty decent arm. I think he can be up there for the MVP at the end of the year.
Absolutely. He's been there before. He's been that player before. It's the injuries in the way.
Yeah, and his attitude too, because he has had a bad attitude for a while. But if he goes in with a clean mindset this year and takes care of business, he could be up in the top 3 for MVP voting at the end of the year.
I agree. And I see that happening. If he stays healthy and that team stays in the right path, I do think that he could be in that MVP talk for sure when it's all said and done.
Yeah, and Baltimore will follow that success, and I think they could be a Super Bowl contender at the end of the year.
Agreed. I think they'll be that dark horse. Like, even though you have OBJ and you have Lamar Jackson, I still think you'd consider them probably a dark horse with all those other AFC powerhouses. But I think they could be in it too. I really think they could. And I think they'll add a couple more pieces. I don't think we're done seeing them put pieces around Jackson.
Right. Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch for sure. But I think Lamar Jackson, if he comes in with a healthy mindset, he's going to be as dangerous as anyone. It's just, he is one of the best two-way quarterbacks in the league when healthy, bar none.
That's what sets him apart. That's the reason I have him at my number 2 spot. It's not so much that he's, he obviously doesn't have the Super Bowls. He doesn't have all of that. But I mean, when we look at both of our lists of top 5, the only quarterback with a Super Bowl is Patrick Mahomes, I believe, at least. So
yeah,
he's the player that's set apart. That's why he's our number 1, because he's the player that is just set apart from all the others. Because when Patrick Mahomes hasn't been winning these last few years, it's been the Staffords, it's been the Tom Brady's, it's been those players. Patrick Mahomes is that guy. I honestly, the distance between 1 and 2 for me is pretty big.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, for sure. It's really an interesting talking point.
We'll have to revisit it during the season.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll be able to revisit it because our lists could be extremely accurate or extremely inaccurate. Well, we won't know till those snaps start happening, until those games start racking up. So we'll definitely have more to talk about with the top quarterbacks in the league, I have a feeling.
Yeah, I agree. I'm pretty sure we'll know quite a bit more about these quarterbacks midway through the season. Whether they're healthy or if they're hurt, put on the injured reserve list or whatever. Or if they're putting up absolutely gaudy video game numbers. So yeah, we'll absolutely have to touch back on our top 5 as we get into the season. We're only a couple of months away from preseason games starting in the NFL. Just over a couple of months away from college football kicking off too. Football season's right here. It is right here, and I am all for it. It's one of my favorite times of the year. Talking more NFL. Kind of an interesting talking point because obviously Russell Wilson is with the Broncos right now. He had an absolute terrible year with the Broncos. So, interesting question. Who do you think is going to have the better season between the Broncos and the Seahawks? My answer's quite obvious. I think the Seahawks are going to have the better year. What about you?
Part of it is just going off of how the last season went, because at the end of the day, sometimes teams can make big turnarounds, but you can't usually make that big of a turnaround from losing that many games, blowing that many games, looking like a team dead in the water. Coming back from that is extremely hard. Their one point is they did get Super Bowl winning coach Peyton, but my thing with that is, yeah, he's a Super Bowl winning coach. He's had success. That might not translate. Russell Wilson is a Super Bowl winning quarterback. That didn't translate. It doesn't always translate. My only thinking is maybe with that coaching change, they'll start moving in the right direction. But when we look at a team that is ready to go now, it's the Seahawks, because they made the playoffs last season. They made a push last season. The Broncos weren't even close. They were out of playoff contention quickly, whether it was their record-wise or just the way they were playing. No one looked at them as a playoff team that seriously very late into the season. They lost that pretty quickly. So I will say that it's easy. It's like you said, it's an obvious answer. It's the Seahawks. Now, can the Broncos build to the success that the Seahawks have, if not more? Of course,
Absolutely.
without a doubt. Will that be with Russell Wilson? I don't think so. I don't. But then again, how can you get it? They're under such a big contract. It almost has to be. And do I think the Broncos could be successful with Wilson? At some point, maybe. I just think that he's an aging quarterback. His skill set, well, it has been looked at as high caliber. I think it's become extremely limited, and it just looks stiff. What made Russell Wilson so great, I don't think we're seeing that anymore. We're seeing all the bad. We're seeing none of the good. So I don't think, he had some moments last season, but not really. I don't think this Broncos team can rebound that fast, even if they can turn things around and maybe win 6. This is what I'll say. I think the Broncos floor for me is they only win 5 games, but their ceiling for me is only 7 wins. Their floor is 5. Their ceiling for me is 7. I think they'll finish between 5, 6, and 7 wins this season.
That's a really good prediction. It's like I've heard a lot of people, going around. It's like, especially Seahawks fans. Man, I'm glad Russell Wilson's out of here. And I'm like, really? He won a Super Bowl with you guys? And they're like, yeah. There was a lot of toxicity between Russell Wilson and that Seahawks organization.
On both sides.
Yeah, it was on both sides. He was trying to get the coaching staff fired. He was trying to pull Tom Brady and fire the coaching staff, thinking that he was the GM of that team, which is not true. So that put him in a position to go to Denver, and he had a very, very terrible year with Denver. Denver has the weapons to compete with anybody in that division, but they were nowhere close. As we have learned in the NFL, your team will go as far as your quarterback will take it. It's been a quarterback-centric league for like the last decade at least. Everything revolves around the quarterback in the NFL. If your quarterback is having a bad year, there are really good chances that your team is not sniffing the playoffs and they're sniffing a number one pick. So, in order for the Broncos to have any sort of success this year, it's obvious it all revolves around Russell Wilson.
It does.
It all revolves around him.
I don't think that he's a player that can handle that either at this point.
No, I think he's getting to that point in his career where he's kind of become washed up.
Perfect word for it.
So, can he have a really good year at the Broncos? Yes. The Broncos have the weapons? Yes. Am I going to put absolute every freaking dollar that I make at work on him making the playoffs? Absolutely not. Because I do think the Broncos organization is still a mess.
Oh my, yeah, nothing has changed. Nothing.
No.
And nothing probably will change, honestly. Denver has some really good organizations. The Broncos are one of the worst now.
Yeah.
By far one of the worst professional sports teams in Colorado, just with how they're ran. And it's unfortunate because there's a lot of history there. And man, I've been to Broncos Raiders games and the energy there is incredible. Like I'll tell you what, though, I was wearing my Marshawn Lynch Raiders jersey, if you can even believe that's a real thing. It was briefly. And I had some terrible Broncos. Man, the rivalry is real. I'd never been to a sporting event where people were actually like yelling things at me. It was pretty crazy, but it was a great experience because of that, the intensity, you know what I'm saying? Like Mile High, that's a special place. So it does it's unfortunate. I'm a Raiders fan. I love watching the Broncos lose. Last season was the best season ever just because the Broncos were so bad. But I want to see Raiders Broncos go head to head. Let's see them go head to head in the playoffs. Let's just see them go head to head somewhere and it actually be a competitive game. It'd be cool to see the Broncos, one of the more historic teams, be better than what they are. But as a Raiders fan, I'm living for them to be in a bad spot. But again, just like we talked about last episode, because of Jimmy G, we might be in the same exact spot as the Broncos with not having success. So there's that. But it'll be interesting, man. Obviously, once the season starts, that's when we'll really know. Maybe the Broncos make some moves. Maybe we see something happen and they surround Wilson with a couple more weapons, or they just figure something. Maybe they pull some surprise move and get out DeAndre Hopkins or do something. There's still pieces out there. So we'll see. But like you said, man, I'm not putting any money. I'm not putting any money on them winning more than 7 games.
Yeah. And I think that's a place that most people should be.
Agreed.
If they win more than 7 games and you bet on it, well, props to you.
You're braver than I am.
You're a lot braver than I am, absolutely. Do you think Geno Smith at the end of the year for the Seahawks, do you think he could be potentially in the running for an MVP? He had a really good year last year. But do you think he has what it takes to step it up to the point where he is in that conversation where he can get the Seahawks to potentially be an NFC championship contender?
That's a great question, man. I think that for me, it all depends on the pieces around Geno Smith. They have a really well-balanced offense. They have a pretty well-balanced. I mean, the Seahawks are a decently well-balanced team. I think that people have kind of forgotten how good they are. As annoying as Pete Carroll is to some people, I do think that Pete Carroll is a really good coach, and I do think he's proven that he can really take an organization that was on top and then dropped and bring them back closer to the top at least. And not all coaches can do that. I mean, let's look at Belichick. He hasn't done that with the Patriots yet. Yeah, they've made the playoffs a couple of times since Brady, but maybe they made it twice since Brady, maybe. I'm not sure, something like that. They have not made it consistently since Brady left. But Carroll stayed consistent. And one of the players last season that really showed out for them was Smith. So I think that it's possible, but it also depends on how healthy and how consistent the pieces around Smith can stay, because Smith will only be as good as the offense he's carrying with him. So it's really going to depend on how well that team can stay healthy and how consistent some of their key players can stay. But I can see Geno Smith being an MVP consideration for sure. I definitely can. And even beyond that, I can see him leading the Seahawks maybe even farther than he did last season. That I can see definitely over the MVP, but I can see him being in consideration as well too. So I think this absolutely could be the Seahawks and Geno Smith's year to kind of rise to the next level.
Yeah, I can definitely see him kind of stepping up his game a little bit. We saw him like before last year, he wasn't an incredibly consistent quarterback. Last year, he finally showed some consistency and it paid off. Nobody was expecting the Seahawks to make a playoff push without Russell Wilson. Everybody was like, oh, it's Geno Smith. He is very inconsistent. Yes, that has been true for the large part of his career. But now I think Geno Smith is in a position to succeed. I think he's in a place where he can succeed. The Seahawks have a lot of talent.
It's the perfect spot for him. It is the perfect spot. But I will say another thing you said, inconsistency. We also have to look at his career. He's been bounced between a backup and a starter so many different, like he hasn't really had a consistent career or a consistent chance until now, if you ask me. So I think the Seahawks giving him a whole season, giving him that whole season and really relying on him and being like, you're our guy. At the end of the day, the Seahawks won the Super Bowl, not Russell Wilson. That's what we've seen. It was the Seahawks team, the Legion of Boom. It was Marshawn. It was those players. It wasn't Russell Wilson. It was those players that were around Russell Wilson. And if you ask me, this might be a hot take, but at the very moment that we're speaking now, not his whole career, Geno Smith for me is a better quarterback than Russell Wilson now.
Mm-hmm.
So you take a quarterback that's arguably better than your Super Bowl winning quarterback, you put him with pieces that might not be, they're not the exact same as who you won the Super Bowl with, but they're still really talented. You put that together, we might be looking at a dark horse NFC team this next season. We really could be, because from their jump from the season before last to last season was huge. If they make another jump like that, we're looking at them in the NFC Championship or the Super Bowl.
Yeah. It's crazy how something can change once you get somebody in there with a healthy mindset.
Exactly. That's the biggest thing right there, man. That's the key.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Obviously, we will definitely know about these two teams come the midpoint, probably in October, November. We'll definitely have to touch back on it when we get into the season. Especially after summer workouts and preseason games. Yeah, it's an interesting talking point. It'll be interesting to see where both teams end up. Let's transition over to a little free agency talk now. There's some big name running backs in free agency right now. Dalvin Cook, Kareem Hunt, Ezekiel Elliot, Dalvin Cook, and Leonard Fournette. Where do all these running backs fit? That is the ultimate question. I would love, just for the sake of Jordan Love, not putting everything on his shoulders, I would love the Packers picking up any one of these guys. Kareem Hunt obviously brings you a lot of speed. Dalvin Cook brings you a lot of shiftiness. Ezekiel Elliott's more of your power back. That does have a little bit of breakaway speed. Leonard Fournette is a power back. He's your, for the most part, third down back. He could pick up all the tough yardage. All really good players. So my question to you, man, where do you see these guys ending up? Because they will all find homes.
Yeah, so this is what I'll say. I definitely do agree with you that they will find homes. The one thing that I will say that's a little bit tricky is veteran running backs, because they're all getting closer to being able to be, called veteran running backs. They are not as sought after as other veteran offensive players, because sometimes the miles have ran in. If we look at a player like Zeke, that's a player that, 2015, 2016, 2017, throughout the end of his college career and into the beginning of his NFL career, he looked like he'd be the best running back in the league consistently. And he was up there for a minute, and then the miles started to get to him. And that's why the Cowboys are moving on. But what I will say is this. All of these players will find homes. When we talk about Ezekiel Elliott, I will say any of these quarterbacks I can see being fit with the Packers. I can see the Packers looking for that veteran running back to put with a younger quarterback, to put with an offense that needs that like veteran leadership, and also you need that star talent, you need that attraction, that star, and any of those players bring that. So I can see any of those players going to the Packers. I can see the Cowboys offering one of these players a contract. Obviously, they've got younger, legs for running back, but I do think they could put, a veteran behind that. Do I think it'll be Ezekiel Elliott? I really don't. I don't think Ezekiel Elliott will go back to the Cowboys. I'm honestly looking at the Cowboys and I'm saying, I think I can see Leonard Fournette being a backup for them, or at least I can see that being a scenario that works out. Another team, speaking of Leonard Fournette, that might be looking to add a veteran running back or just veteran talent to their team is the Tampa Bay Bucks. That is a team that is kind of turning over a new leaf and moving forward. Do they have some offensive talent? Do they have some pieces? Yes. But I can see them again. All of these players for me may not be full-time starters. There might be some games where it works to play them a little bit, but I don't see any of them being full-time starters for any like top tier teams. Now, a team like the Packers, a team like the Bucks, are they top tier teams at this moment? I don't know if I'd call them top tier teams. So maybe they get more playing time on those teams. But if we're talking about the Cowboys, like I threw around, I think the Eagles could potentially look at Dalvin Cook or maybe even Kareem Hunt and maybe even Ezekiel Elliott as at least a backup. These are teams that will be backups. Teams like the Eagles, teams like the Cowboys, these are teams that will probably call their numbers for backups. Teams like the Packers and the Bucks, you might get more of a starting role on that team and you might be first string. So I guess the top 4 teams that I think any of these players could go to for me would be Cowboys, Eagles, Bucks. What was the 4th one I said? Did I say a 4th one? Maybe I didn't say a 4th one yet.
Like Packers, maybe?
There it is. Sorry. Yeah, man, I had a brain fart just now. Packers. There we go. So my top 4 landing spots that I can see any of these players are Packers, Bucks, and then I've got Eagles and Cowboys. Those would be my top 4. One more I want to throw in just as kind of a wild card, because I do think that this is a team that could pursue any of these players because of where they're at. And that's Washington. The Washington Commanders. I see the Commanders potentially being a spot for either Ezekiel Elliott or Dalvin Cook. I have a feeling that that is a team that not only would give one of these players a first string role, I also think that these players could really benefit them. So those would be my 5 teams that I see that I see as top potential landing spots. So what about you, man? Do you see any of the same teams, or do you got a whole different list going on?
I've got the same exact list, man. I honestly got the same exact list. You couldn't have said it any better. Any one of those 4 spots, I could see any of these running backs land. Obviously, teams like the Packers, any one of these quarterbacks will probably be a week 1 starter. Every one of the other teams in this list, I think they're all backups because they all have suitable starting running backs that had pretty big years last year. So it's kind of an interesting talking point. The free agency market's absolutely stacked right now. So it'll be interesting to see where all these really good players end up.
Absolutely. I mean, we haven't seen the end of this. We've only seen the beginning. So we'll definitely have more, and there'll be more players that we'll have to throw around in future episodes. I already know that. I mean, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And obviously, once these players have homes, we'll probably have an episode where once free agency is wrapping up, where we kind of go over landing spots, who did the best, who did the, that whole thing. So, but there's plenty of time until that point. But moving on, some NBA talk. We're going to start with some NBA finals talk. We've got a couple things to talk about today, not just the finals, but we are going to start there. As we record this episode, Game 4 is taking place this evening. I believe it's 7:30 Central, potentially. I think that's when it is.
Yeah.
Sure, it's 2:30 for me. So the times are always different because I'm so far behind mainland time. But I will say this. Nuggets have a 2-1 lead. They won. Obviously, Heat pulled off game 2, had a really honestly solid win. I would say that the Heat looked really great. It was a close, hard-fought game. The Heat came out 111 to 108. We go to game 3. Denver wins by a pretty commanding margin, 109 to 94. And Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic look like the best duo that has played in the NBA Finals for a couple of seasons. They went off. They played ridiculously good ball. So obviously before, I think we were both with game 6 as a game 6 elimination. The Heat get eliminated game 6. I know you said your heart wanted to say Heat in 7. Since game 3, going into game 4, first of all, what's your prediction for game 4? But has your prediction for the series shifted at all since game 3? What are your thoughts going into game 4 and beyond for this series?
I don't think mine has changed very much. Because what this series has been so far is punch, counterpunch, punch, counterpunch. One team gets punched in the mouth, they come back and win the next one. So I think the Heat actually pick a game up tonight. I think they bring it back to 2-2. They have to play way better than they did the other night, but they showed that they did that in game 2. They didn't play great game 1. They came back and changed their game plan in game 2 and they tied up the series. So obviously, like there's a little bit of punch counterpunch action going on. One team throws a punch, the other team comes right back. My prediction still has Nuggets in 6. I do think the Nuggets will win it in 6 games. But do I think the Heat can possibly get it to game 7? Yes, I do. Eric Spoelstra is a really good coach. When he gets down to the end of his career, he may be one of the best coaches to ever coach in the association by far.
I'm with that, dude. That's a great call.
The dude was a video coordinator before he was a coach for the Miami Heat. Video coordinator.
That is the definition of working your way up.
Yes, absolutely. Going from a video coordinator to now one of the winningest NBA coaches is insane. 20 plus years on the sideline. So I think Spoelstra will have this Heat team ready to go. And I think we'll see a big game out of Jimmy Butler tonight. I think we'll see a big game out of Bam Adebayo tonight.
Bam's played good the whole series, honestly.
He's played really good.
Bam has been their most consistent player, if you ask me, this last series. And that, unfortunately, is not currently showing in the win-loss column in the series, but he's been really consistent. I agree with you that Jimmy Butler needs to have a big game. Here's the thing. There's 2 players on the Miami Heat that need to have a big game, and one of them is obvious and one of them is not obvious. One of them is obvious. It's Jimmy Butler. He has to have a big game. Yeah, you know what? He had a decent game in game 3. Obviously, he scored, 28 points. That's great. But 2 rebounds, 4 assists. We see more out of him on the other side of things, the other stat lines, most games when he's more successful. And we also see 5 to 10 more points too. When Jimmy Butler is successful, he's scoring 30 plus and he's doing more than 2 rebounds and 4 assists. That's the difference there. And the second player, Kevin Love. Kevin Love. They need to utilize Kevin Love. Game 2, when they won, they played him for, I believe it was, what was it, 16? Let me triple check. I think it was 16 minutes. Let me triple check. Yeah. So they played him for 16 minutes in game 2, but he had 6 points and 10 rebounds.
Yep.
And he was really showing up in the paint against Jokic and actually disrupting the flow a little bit. You need to utilize Kevin Love. You
Yep.
cannot slow down Jokic. You cannot keep up with this team if you don't utilize Kevin Love. You need to utilize Kevin Love. Is Kevin Love going to have a typical Minnesota Kevin Love game where he has a big double-double? No. Is he going to have a Cavs Kevin Love game? Probably not. But he can still
make an impact.
He could put a double-double up 10 and 10. He easily could do 10 and 10. If
Yeah.
you give him 20 minutes, he could potentially give you 10 and 10 and do a good job of disrupting the flow for Jokic and Gordon and a couple of those bigger players. So you play Kevin Love, you utilize Kevin Love, and I think you have a chance. I think if Jimmy Butler has a huge game and Kevin Love, now obviously Bam Adebayo has to have a good game, and some of Miami's shooters definitely have to show up a little bit more. But the two key players for me are Jimmy Butler and they are Kevin Love. But right behind them is Bam Adebayo, and right behind them are some of their shooters. But what I will say is this: if Miami drops the game tonight, oh man, I think it's a 5-game series. I really do. I think that Miami needs to win tonight because, like you said, the thing that has made this series so great and so close is it's been a counterpunch. We've never had one team pull away too much. Now we've only had 3 games. It's not like we've had 20 games of the series and it's boom, 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 but it's been boom, boom, boom throughout the first 3. If Miami can counter tonight, I actually think we are going to 7. I think my prediction has changed, if I'm being completely honest, to 2 scenarios. 1, Nuggets win tonight, Nuggets win in 5. 2, Heat win tonight, Nuggets win in 7. So either way, I have the Nuggets winning, but I do think the Heat can maybe push them to the brink, especially if they counter like they have been doing. So either way, man, good luck for your Heat. Good luck. They're in the finals, 8th seed. The playoffs were not an easy path for them. They played some pretty difficult teams, especially in round 1 against the number 1 seeded Bucks. So shout out to your boys. We got to give them some respect. And Coach Spo worked his way up, started from the bottom, one of the best to ever do it. So plenty of respect to all of them. But I do think this Nuggets team, it's just their season. Whether it's 5 or 7 or 6 even, I just think this Nuggets team, they play basketball like a dynasty. They're playing basketball like you called out last episode. This could be the next NBA dynasty team that at least wins 2 to 3 championships together.
Yeah. For sure. Nothing has changed with that. They're really good. Like I said last episode, I could see this Nuggets team being up there with those Warriors teams that won. Like that Warriors team that went 73-9 like 6 or 7 years ago. Like I could see them being that good. I could see them being that dominant.
I hope not.
I hope not either.
Man, honestly, bro, even I don't really want to see another Lakers. Like I like the back and forthness of the NBA since the Warriors dynasty. I like the balance. And this Nuggets team could be the team to disrupt that balance. So, man, I'm with you, bro. That's such a great call. Until this season, I never thought that this Nuggets team would be a dynasty. It took them building their team like they did to this season, to this point, for it to really look like that. But I'm with you, man. They look like that Warriors level of dynasty. And let's give some shout out to Jamal Murray. He's that Curry level of point guard. He absolutely is a Curry. I mean, Curry is a better point guard all in all. Curry's the best point guard in the league. But I've got Jamal Murray in my top 10 in the league easily because he's incredible, man. I think he is extremely underrated. And I think after this season, especially if and when they win that chip, I don't think that'll happen again because he is Jokic is a huge factor, but Murray is unstoppable when he catches fire. So he is a huge part, but obviously we'll reconvene. I mean, even if the series is done, by the time we do a next episode, we'll obviously have stuff to talk about with the series and how it all wrapped up. Moving on to another NBA topic, kind of an interesting slightly unfortunate. I hate when my Lakers are in the news or in the media for stuff, but of course they usually always are. Something came out that Kyrie Irving, at first I thought that I was reading this wrong. I was like, am I reading this wrong? LeBron James recruiting Kyrie to LA? No, that's not what it said. Kyrie Irving recruiting LeBron James to the Mavs. That came out maybe 3 days ago, 4 days ago, and it's been blowing up ever since on NBA social media, sports social media. There even was a graph that came out of Draymond Green, LeBron, Luka, and Kyrie on the same team. First and foremost, there's no way that would ever happen. There's no way that the Mavs could get those players, especially because it's a trade situation. Anyways, that being said, though, that aside, do you think that there's any level of truth to A, LeBron leaving the Lakers, and B, the Mavs being the landing spot for LeBron? Or do you think that this is just all smoke and mirrors, off season craziness that's going to result in LeBron staying a Laker and none of this actually formulating?
I think this is just smoke. I'm just going to be kind of blunt with it. It's smoke. I don't see LeBron leaving the Lakers at this point in his career. He's 38 years old. He's nearing the end of his career. I think he's going to finish out his career in LA. This is just it's all trying to stir up noise. It's getting everybody talking. And I think this is just a ploy for Kyrie Irving to get himself a big contract. I think that I think this is why he is doing this. He's trying to recruit LeBron to be like, hey, I've got this pull, which I don't think he has that pull anyway. He's like, yeah, I've got this pull to get LeBron here. Give me a big contract. I think this is what it's all about. Kyrie Irving's a good basketball player. Don't get me wrong. But he's bounced around way too damn much. Going from Boston to the Nets, now to Dallas. It's like 3 teams in the last 6 years because he's unhappy at each one of these spots that he goes to. I don't think there's any truth of it at all. I don't think there's any truth. It's just it's kind of a ridiculous thing because my entire Twitter feed was full of this.
Yeah, no, same. That's all it is right now. Social media is all about Kyrie, LeBron, and that's what it always is. Whenever there's something. Now, we've seen this with Kyrie. Kyrie has been in the media for more than just basketball the last 4 years. At least once every 3 months there's something about Kyrie in the media, and that's the truth. That, unfortunately for him, his name has been in the media for way more than basketball. And this is obviously basketball, but it's more because it's recruitment, it's off-season work. Here's the deal. Let's just look at the facts. Same with we did this with the NFL with Seahawks versus Broncos. The Dallas Mavs didn't even make the playoffs. LeBron is 38 freaking years old, and 3 ball dominant players on the same team. Let's say they do somehow figure out how to get Luka, Kyrie, and LeBron on the same team. That would not work. I'm sorry. You could surround them with all the shooters, all the big men in the world, and that would not work. It would not be something that would work. And I think LeBron is the highest IQ in all of basketball, in my opinion, at least currently. So he knows. He has to know. I think that at the end of the day, I don't even think Kyrie is staying a Mav. I really don't. I think it's a possibility, but especially we have our next topic we'll talk about in a second with Chris Paul being waived. With that, I'm looking at this maybe we see Chris Paul or Kyrie reunite with Kevin Durant, because he's already hinted about wanting to do that anyway. When him and Kevin Durant split from the Nets, he made some remarks, oh, I want to reunite with him at some point, blah, 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 blah. So I see him maybe going to the Suns. I also see him maybe still becoming a Laker. Even though there's all this and that, I think that at the end of the day, he could still become a Laker. And then another team that I have him going to is maybe the Bucks. I see that being a good fit for him, and I also see it being a possibility. So those are the three teams. And then fourth for me is him staying in Mav. But I've got that fourth because I just don't think that he's going to stay a Maverick. Now, I guess if they're talking big money, I think Kyrie has proved that he is not a player that cares that much about championships. Like, he might say he does to save face, but I think that Kyrie Irving is in it for the money. He's in it for the market value. I don't really think he cares that much about winning another chip, which is fine. And maybe he does, and he just hasn't came out and said that. But I don't think Dallas is even the place for him. You know what I mean? I don't think Dallas is the place for Kyrie. As much as he's moved around, I don't think Dallas is the place for him. So LeBron going there would not be something that makes sense. LeBron hasn't said anything. Now, LeBron hasn't even posted. He usually posts. I've seen too many of these posts as a Lakers fan. Oh, sorry, Lakers fans, we'll get them next year. He always posts that after we get bounced, whether that be from the playoffs or just the regular season. He didn't do that this season. He hasn't posted anything. He has been radio silent. And for me, we already talked about how he said he might retire, blah, blah, blah. That's not happening. This is what I think this is. LeBron James has 1 or 2 seasons left as a Laker, and maybe even just as an NBA player. And then I think that's it. I really do. I think he will play until he is, because he's 38 now. I think he'll play till he's 39, maybe 40, but I think that's it. And I think the only way he will stay with the Lakers after this next season is if they win the title or they make it to the finals and they lose, and he wants to try to run it back again. I don't think that if they lose next season in the playoffs, he'll come. I think that'll be that. Maybe he'll go try to play with his son if Bronny enters the league after that. But I just think we have one guaranteed season with LeBron. We have one. This is the last dance for us with LeBron to win a title. So I think there's a lot at play here, and I think he knows that, and I don't think he's going to give that up to go to Dallas.
No, absolutely not. Not at this point in his career. If he was like 5 or 6 years younger, maybe.
Oh, yeah. If this was instead of the Lakers, if we're talking about this in, 2018, I think it was, if we're talking about this in 2018, then this does make sense. But this making another move, unless it's to play with his son, I don't think makes sense.
No, it doesn't. So it's all smoke. I think we can both agree with that.
No, I think it is. I hope it is. You know how mad I'm going to be if as much as I'm not the biggest fan of LeBron, I will be a little disappointed if he leaves, because that will signify the start of a rebuild. Even if we keep AD and we keep the other pieces, that just signifies the start of a new era and a rebuild. And I don't want to see that. We have already been through that with when Kobe. Oh my gosh, man. I don't know if I can handle that one, but time will tell. I don't think I'll have to worry about that at least quite yet. But moving on, speaking of Chris Paul, we just brought him up. We've got a couple more NBA topics to go over. Actually, both revolve around the Suns, if you can believe it. First one is Chris Paul being waived. He was waived, I believe, yesterday from the Suns, but there was talk of him actually ending up re-signing with the Suns in a different contract. You know how it works in the business world of the NBA, reshaping it, resurfacing it. So my two questions were, one, where do you think Chris Paul will end up? Do you think he'll go back with the Suns? The Lakers are in the mix. Do you think the Mavs are also in the mix now too? They were thrown in there, and a couple other teams. Where do you think Chris Paul ends up is my first question. And my second question is Chris Paul still a high caliber enough player to be a starting successful point guard in this league?
First question, I think he ends up back with the Suns. I think they are doing this to kind of maybe restructure his contract a little bit. He has been a really good fit with the Phoenix organization the last few years. He's done pretty good work. To answer your latter question, do I still think he is one of the best point guards in the league? I don't think he's bad by any means. But do I think he is where he was like earlier on in his career? No. He's an older player. Do I still think he can be a starting point guard? Yes, because his experience doing it all these years. He's a really good basketball player, man. He has been most of his career.
Highlight reel player.
Yes.
Crazy talented with the ball.
Yeah. And even at his older age, he is still a really good point guard. So I do think he re-signs with the Suns after they talk, because right now, let's see here, a day ago, like CBS Sports posted is like they're weighing multiple options for guard's future. They're like, we could trade or we could re-sign him. So they're just seeing who bites. Who's gonna bite for Chris Paul to come join them? That way the Suns can work out a trade for him. But most of these teams are trying to go a little younger too. Obviously, having star power is great, but a lot of teams are going for players in terms of longevity. Because I don't know if Chris Paul has like 10 more years in the league. I don't think he does. LeBron James is the same way. He definitely doesn't have 10 years left in the league. He's probably got a year or two left, and then he's going to put up his shoes. Chris Paul is in that same conversation. So I do think he's going to re-sign with the Suns. If he doesn't re-sign with the Suns, I could see him going to Dallas. I think Dallas would be a pretty decent spot for him. I think that would give Dallas a little bit more of an edge in some matchups as well. So it's kind of an interesting talking point. It really is. Where do you think he is going to end up? Do you think he's going to end up re-signing, or what do you see happening?
Well, like you said, it's an extremely interesting talking point. I think that you can't look at it any other way, because Chris Paul averaged, I believe it was 8.9, I think, assists this last season, and his career high is 9.3. So he's still able to dish the ball around like the best of them. The problem is injuries, and the problem is also his other stats fell off. His points dropped by 4. His rebounds stayed around the same. He's never been, I mean, he's a 4.5, I think, rebound a game, a career average. So he's not a rebounding guard. He never has been. I don't think he pretends to be, but he still can get boards, and he still can get the board, dish it, and that's worked really well for him. So I will say that he's a fantastic player skill set wise to this day. The problem is injuries. And I don't blame the Suns from maybe looking to moving on from him potentially because of the injuries. Because I think for me, you can be a fantastic player, but if you're constantly getting injured, you're not great. The best ability is availability, and Chris Paul has not had that the last few seasons completely. His last season where he looked like full Chris Paul was when they went up against the Bucks in the finals, and I thought he was going to win. I really did. I thought Chris Paul's going to get his reign, and then he's going to retire, and I think he really would have if he won that season. But unfortunately, that was not what happened, and he's still in, and the Suns have not been able to make it work since. And so this is what I will say. Do the Suns potentially re-sign him? Yes. Like you said, I do think they're kind of waving the bait out to see who will bite. What I will say is this. The Lakers are the team that is favorited to land him if he leaves the Suns. What I will say I love about this is a player that is as old as Chris Paul, who has the IQ of Chris Paul, who has 8.9 assists per game, if that doesn't drop off. He's not a ball dominant guard. He really is a guy that can dish it around. Matching him with AD and LeBron, if he is healthy, could be a recipe for success. But imagine this. LeBron, injury prone. He's injury prone now. We have to call him injury prone. He is injury prone at this point in his career because of his age. AD, he's been injury prone his whole time playing basketball since high school. We've seen him have injury problems. Chris Paul, if all three of these players, I worry that we would see a similar Russell Westbrook situation, and I don't want to see that. I do think Chris Paul's a different player and he's a better player overall, but I think we would see a Russell Westbrook situation where we would get the wrong guy. We'd go for the wrong guy and then it would bite us in the butt. So I'm not super sold on Chris Paul. I would rather have Kyrie Irving than Chris Paul on the Lakers, if I'm being honest. But I still think that if he leaves the Suns, the landing spot that I can see is maybe he goes to the Lakers. And what some people don't know is he was supposed to be a Laker before when Kobe was a Laker. So it would be kind of cool to see that. But I just kind of feel like it would be like when we got Steve Nash. It's a little bit too late in their careers for it to be that big.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they're obviously getting really late in their careers. I don't see any of these players moving around too much more at this point. I think they're gonna try to stay in these spots. LeBron's gonna try and stay in LA. I do think Chris Paul's gonna try and stay with Phoenix as well. Because they are in a, for the most part, pretty comfortable spot. I would not want to be a player that's in my late 30s getting moved around too much. Because you're toward the end of your career. You want to finish with a team. You don't want to pack up all your things and move. But the NBA is a business. So I don't know. It's really interesting, but I do think he stays with Phoenix. I think I could say that pretty comfortably. I think he will stay with Phoenix. Now, sticking with Phoenix, Frank Vogel is taking over the Suns. Is it a good hire? Yes, I think the Phoenix Suns hiring Vogel is a really good hire. I do think he is the one that can kind of take the Phoenix Suns to that next step. It's a really good hire to do what they want to do. I think they can be like, it may take them a bit to, kind of get things established, maybe a year or two. But within about year 3, I do think the Phoenix Suns are going to be up towards the top in the West. I think he is going to improve that roster a little bit. I think he's going to get a lot of good talent in there through free agency or the draft. I think it's a really good hire, man. What's your standpoint on it?
I have a unique, interesting opinion on this because Vogel obviously was the last championship winning coach for my Lakers, and he's a good coach. We've seen him take teams like the Indiana Pacers with Paul George and make them great. What I will say is this. I really see Vogel as a guy that can take a group of young, scrappy, younger players and turn them into a really well-balanced team. We've only seen him really have a team with like set stars, like a Kevin Durant, like a Booker, when he coached the Lakers, and it worked for one season. And then the next season, we really saw him. I think my biggest problem with Vogel is his lineups. He's really not the best at making consistent lineups. Even in the bubble when we won, I think we saw him have some really inconsistencies. And then once it was that next nightmare season, it's not his fault. I'm not going to make him the scapegoat like the Lakers tried to, but I will say that he didn't handle it well. So I think it could be a great hire. I think it could be a great situation. But I also have my questions because of what I saw as a Lakers fan with how he handled lineups, especially with those superstars. And also Kevin Durant. Obviously, Kevin Durant had to have signed off on this, but I'm kind of shocked with coaches like Doc Rivers, which I think Doc Rivers is overrated anyway. And I don't think he's that great of a coach, if we're being completely honest. But coaches such as him, I'm surprised that with those coaches in the mix, Kevin Durant signed off on Vogel, but there must be something that he sees. And I don't blame him. I mean, Vogel makes really well-balanced, really great defensive, fast-paced teams. So I think it could be good, but I have my questions just because of being a Lakers fan and knowing how it ended as a Laker. I'm just kind of curious how it will go. But again, it's not Vogel's fault that the Lakers didn't win another title with him on their roster. I'm not going to on their team. I'm not going to say it's their fault. It's his fault, but it'll be time will tell. But I think it could be a great hire, but it's going to take me seeing it to believe it. But moving on from NBA, we've got a couple more topics to talk about. And another thing going on, it's the best time of the year for finals because the NHL finals, Stanley Cup is still going on. Obviously, man, we checked in last time and this is a great series so far. This is a fantastic series. Game 4 is tomorrow. Vegas leads 2-1. Very, very, very similar to the Heat Nuggets series, if we're being honest. The only difference is actually the Panthers came alive after losing 2 in a row. And they lost game 2 by a pretty big margin, 7-2. When I saw that, I was like, ooh, I don't know about this. But then they came back game 3 and they won. And I thought that it was, I don't know. It was a close game, but I thought that they won by more than what it showed on the scoreboard. I thought the Panthers really controlled the game a lot better. So game 4, man, who do you have winning game 4? And I know we gave our predictions last time, kind of similar with the NBA finals. Since the first 3 games, has your prediction changed at all?
Yes, because I had the Panthers winning it all. The Golden Knights showed in game 1 and game 2, they are the utmost better team. They won game 1 5-2. They won game 2 7-2. They fell back as soon as they went into Florida. But do I think that the Panthers can make a little noise now that they're on their home ice? Yes, I do. The Golden Knights took a 2-0 series lead outside of Vegas. But now it's back in Florida, which the Panthers have played really good at home in the playoffs. Really good at home. I think the Panthers find a way to tie it up 2-2. But I've got the Golden Knights winning it in 6. I think the Golden Knights are just that good. They have a really fast top line. They've got a really good goaltender between the pipes. I think this is the Golden Knights' year to win it. As much as I want the Florida Panthers to win it as an underdog story, a team that wasn't even sniffing a playoffs with like 2.5 weeks to go in the season, and now they find them in a spot where they're 3 wins away from a Stanley Cup final. So I still think like I would love the Panthers to win, but after games 1 and game 2, I don't know if I trust the Florida Panthers as much. So I'm going Golden Knights in 6. I said Panthers, I think, in 7. The last episode. What about you? Has anything changed with you in terms of your prediction at all?
So here's what I will say. My prediction absolutely would have changed had the Golden Knights gone up 3-0. The fact that the Golden Knights had such a commanding lead, winning game 2 by 5 points, winning game, 1 5-2. They looked like that team. But here's what I will say. My prediction is still Panthers in 7 because the Golden Knights have looked like that team before and they've still blown it. They've still blown it. Could this be their year? Without a doubt. Absolutely, this could be their year. But we've seen them blow it before. And I can see that history repeats itself, especially on the biggest stage. So I see the Golden Knights potentially winning it? Yes. But the fact that the Panthers came back and won in OT against this Golden Knights team that built that momentum up, I think Miami's going to pull away with it. I think they're going to be that underdog story, and I think they walk away in 7. Can I see your prediction of 6 coming true? Absolutely. I think that is probably would be viewed as the more realistic ending, but the reason that I look at it as the Panthers winning is because the Golden Knights have their inconsistencies that we have seen both regular and especially postseason. Regular season, they've always been a pretty, not always, but the last few seasons, they've been a pretty consistent team. They've been a consistent team, I would say they've just been, they're a more well-balanced team at points, and then they lose that. And you can't really do that and go an entire season and an entire playoffs and end up winning it all. So they're right there, man. It's the end. They've made it up to the end. They've made it to the point where they can close it, but we've seen them blow it before. So I think they're going to blow it. And I think the Panthers are a team that they're the underdog, and not just because they're the underdog, also because of how they play the game of hockey. I think they're a team that will eat that up and they will take advantage of that. And I've got Panthers in 7, man. Call me crazy, but I think they can do it still. Now, if the Golden Knights win the next game, that's it. I don't think, even though we've seen 3-1 leads before, different sport. And I just don't think that'll happen. I don't think it's really difficult to come back from a 3-1 lead in any sport, but especially hockey.
Oh, for sure. If the Golden Knights go up 3-1 tomorrow night, I think the series is done.
I'm with you. I think it is too, but I do think that the Panthers can pull it off tomorrow, even it up 2-2, and then I think they can build on that and maybe end up winning in 7.
Yeah, I agree. If the Panthers need to come out and win tomorrow, that's if they have any sort of hope to winning the Stanley Cup, they have to win tomorrow. They have to build on the momentum of that overtime win last night. 100%. They need to. So it's all going off of what's going to go on tomorrow night.
Agreed.
That's the bottom line. If the Panthers come out and win, I could see a scenario where the Panthers still win this series. But they need to show up tomorrow night. They need to show up. They can't afford to fall asleep, because Vegas is way too good of a team for a team like the Panthers just to fall asleep for a night.
They've got to show up they've got to show up from the drop. They've got to be there the game, or that's it, because Vegas is a team that cracks under pressure against teams that are there the whole game.
Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, it's interesting. Like, they need to show up. I really want the Panthers to win. It'd be one of the best underdog stories in the entirety of sports the last couple of years. Really good underdog story.
Absolutely.
Obviously it's all gonna be based on tomorrow night. What happens tomorrow night? We will talk about it next episode. Let's transition over to a little MLS soccer. Something big just happened. Lionel Messi is coming to the MLS in July and August to play for Inter Miami. It is very huge, because the Saudis were looking to sign Messi. I'm going to kind of go off topic here. Obviously, we see the Saudis getting involved in the golf game and everything. They had Live Golf, but now the PGA Tour and Live Golf have merged. So it's now one bigger organization, which is crazy. Well, these same people offered Lionel Messi a 3-year billion-dollar contract to go play in their league. Instead, Messi is coming over to the States to play in the MLS. We've seen a lot of top tier soccer players that are toward the end of their careers come to the MLS. Ibrahimovic is one of those players. He played for the Galaxy for, I think, a couple of years. I think getting Messi to the MLS is very huge for the league. It's huge because it's going to be a fan grab. It's going to be a money grab. People are going to go to these stadiums just to see Lionel Messi play. I might be one of those people. I might take the 2-hour drive down to Kansas City and go take in a Sporting KC game because Lionel Messi is in town. He's one of my favorite soccer players. Even in his older age, he is a really good soccer player. It's huge, man. Absolutely huge. What are your thoughts on Messi and him coming to the MLS? Because I think it's one of the biggest stories in sports right now.
Oh man, yeah, it is. I would say this is the biggest international move in any sport from a different league to the US, because Messi is viewed as, and in my opinion, he is the greatest soccer player of all time. And I think that having the GOAT in America, it's huge, it's gigantic. And I think that this will be the thing that boosts MLS. Obviously, it takes more than one player, it takes more than one team. MLS is exciting, it's had a decent fun, but I think this will be what boosts it even more. And I think Messi making the move, we might see other big names start to make the moves, and then maybe we see Messi going up against other big name international players in the MLS. That is the goal. That is what I want to see. I don't want to, because let's be honest, he's going to be able to smoke anyone he wants on MLS teams. If we're even aging, MLS is great, but Messi is a step above. Those players that come from international leagues are a step above. So I want to see him go head to head against other international players in the MLS. And that is, I think, of course, we've already seen big name international players in the MLS before, but I think this is going to open the door for even more, and it's going to grow. I think it's going to grow. I think that soccer is going to grow in the United States because of Messi coming to Miami. And bro, I looked at ticket prices for home games, and the cheapest tickets before Messi were $27. And I believe the thing I saw was over 200 for the cheapest ticket now since he got there. That is insane. That just shows the pull of Messi and the pull of what this could mean. I'm hyped, man. Messi is one of my, if not my favorite soccer players, and having him in the United States, and I'm with you too, man. I mean, I'm a little farther away, but I might try to find a way to come see him play somewhere, because that's a once in a lifetime opportunity to see a player like that play in person. Like, you get that opportunity not very often. And I don't know how much longer we will have to even see Messi compete. So now is the time to see it, because I think not only is he nearing the end, he's also, even though he's nearing the end, he can still cook just about anyone, especially if it's MLS. So this is the time to see him. We're going to see some really exciting highlights from Messi in Miami. I just cannot wait, man. I'm stoked.
I'm absolutely stoked. Like I said, I might end up making the trek down to Sporting KC to go watch Sporting KC play Miami. It'd be worth it.
Without a doubt.
Like, I wouldn't have a poll, I don't have a team, but, Sporting KC being the closest, MLS team to me, they suck. So ticket prices are probably going to be relatively cheap.
Fair enough. Hey, one can only hope. I will say players like LeBron and like Messi, that they will bring a ticket price up even for a bad team. But I will say we're probably pretty safe because, and that's another thing, the skill level in the MLS. I think a big reason we see these international players come here is because of the skill level with where they're at once they're ready to start looking at retirement. And so I think I think that it's a good situation for everybody involved. Like I said, I do think the MLS could grow based on this move. And I also think that what a time for sports in Miami, bro. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, two teams in the finals and you're getting Messi. That is Miami's on fire right now with sports, and I don't see that slowing. I see that the Miami Heat, and it's not just the team or the weather, but the heat that's picking up for these sports, man, is insane. I'm excited to see where this will go because Miami's kind of becoming the sports hotspot quietly.
Yeah.
Not that they haven't been before, but I don't think they've been looked at as the sports hotspot for more than just one or two teams. And now we're looking at 3 to 4. I mean, we're looking at some big moves. So exciting stuff there. Obviously, we'll talk more about it as it comes. I think this is our first time talking soccer, but we'll talk more. I mean, as it, I mean, if he's, I think, yeah, July, August. So we'll have, once he's in, we'll have more to talk about there, and we'll keep you guys up to date on any other MLS news or just any other soccer news as well. That's a sport that we will throw in the lineup from time to time, but we are coming to the end of our episode today. Nothing really to talk about with motorsports or MMA or really any Husker sports news either. We're kind of in a lull for Husker sports currently. But the one topic I want to close on for this show interests me a lot, and we haven't talked about it quite yet. It's something that I've thought about a couple shows, but I haven't brought up quite yet. And that is Bronny James officially committed to USC. And my question for you is, how good is he really going to be from that transition from high school to college? And how good is USC going to be? Will this move? There's another teammate of his from Sierra Canyon that is going there as well. I don't remember what his name is, but there's another teammate. There's two players from the same school that are star caliber players, looked at as top tier players in the country. Will those two players, Bronny, and let me look I don't want to just say the other player. That sounds not great. While I'm looking what his name is, do you think Bronny will be good in college ball? Will he translate well? And do you think USC will boost forward because of these two guys, specifically Bronny joining their team?
I think USC is definitely poised to potentially have some pretty big seasons coming up with Bronny coming in. We saw it in high school. Bronny is he's a really good basketball player. He's got all of the genetics that his father has. He has in terms of sports. He is extremely athletic. He can get to the ball to the rim. He can shoot the ball. Like he's a pretty good all-around player. And USC needs more of those guys. So I do think, it may take Bronny a couple of years. I don't think it's going to be a one and done scenario for Bronny. I think he needs at least a minimum 2 years in college before he can think about going to the NBA. I think 2 years. Because I do think he needs to add a little bit more muscle to his frame. He needs to get better in some areas of his game. And I think, the coaches at USC will help him get there. But I do think we could see USC within the next year or two being, obviously in March Madness, but I do think that they could potentially make a run if these guys come in and make an instant impact. I do think so. What about you? Do you think that this has potential to be a big impact on USC? Good or bad? But what do you think? What do you think is going to happen at USC now that Bronny is going to be going there, and obviously his teammate from Sierra Canyon is also joining him as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess for me, Bronny is a different player than LeBron. Obviously, He's got similar skill sets, but he's not as dominant. He doesn't have the same build. He's just not the same player LeBron was. And obviously, LeBron made the jump. LeBron made the jump that a lot of people cannot make, even if they end up being NBA stars, and that's the high school to NBA jump. Bronny was never going to do that. So I think the thing that Bronny has over LeBron right off the bat is his three-point shooting. Bronny actually could develop a really dangerous three-point shot and kind of make his own name. I still think we'll see, like you said, he does have the similar attributes and similar play style as his dad in a lot of ways. But I think we'll see him be a far better three-point shooter than Bron. And I think that's what's going to set him apart. I think other than that attribute, LeBron will outplay him and be better in every single aspect. But what I do think he could have better than Bron is a three-point shot, and how important that is in the NBA. Not so much college. It is important, obviously, but the NBA is ran by threes. So that being the case, and that only probably becoming more the case, I think Bronny is going to have a lot of success later on the line. I don't think he'll have that success if he's a one and done. I don't think he's going to be a one and done. And I think LeBron is accepting that. LeBron came out during that whole retirement thing and was like, I've accepted that my dream is to play with my son, but that might not be his dream. That kind of shows me that maybe that really isn't going to happen. Maybe Bronny has made it clear that, like, look, I want to develop my game. I don't want to rush through college. And I think that's the best for everybody involved. If Bronny stays more than 1 year, I really think he could become an NBA star. If he only stays 1 year, I just don't think he will be ready for the NBA. I don't think, even if he has a monster season, you've got to build up on that. So I for Bronny, I think he'll be a great impact. I think USC has always been a pretty decent team. They've got a decent history with sports and a decent history with basketball. I think it's going to be the kind of scenario where it's going to take an entire season. Whether that means during their first season altogether, they get it done, they make madness, all that. I don't know if it means that or if it's going to take a whole season just for them to figure it out. And then the next year they make their push. But I think if Bronny stays, this is my prediction. If Bronny stays for more than a year, I think that they could find themselves in the Elite Eight within his time there. But he has to. They're not going to do that in a year. They're not going to be in the Elite Eight in a year. But I think this USC team could build up, and they could be an Elite Eight team with Bronny within the next few seasons. So I think it's good for everybody involved. And it also comforts me because if Bronny is going to USC, that kind of makes me feel like LeBron is definitely staying a Laker. Like, I know that was before all the other stuff came out and the whatever, but I feel like it doesn't make any sense for him to leave. You know what I'm saying? Like, why would he do that? He can watch his son whenever he wants if he stays in Cali. So that's another poll. Maybe that's the real reason I'm saying Bronny's going to be so good, just because I'm happy LeBron might stay. But I do think it's going to be a good setup, and I think that we will see Bronny develop into an NBA star. I just think it's going to take more time than it took for his dad.
Yeah, I think it's going to take a little bit more time. He doesn't have the same build. I do think he has potential to be the better three-point shooter of the two.
Not
especially one.
LeBron's
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah. So it'll be an interesting thing. Obviously, we'll see how he does in USC when he actually gets to school and actually gets on the court. We'll see how good he really is, because it is a big jump from high school to college. You're going up against some veteran college guys that are poised to get into the NBA. It's going to be way better competition, because it seemed like when he was in, high school, it was he was a man against boys. Now there's going to be a lot of that, but it's going to be the other way around. So we'll see how Bronny adjusts. It's going to be another interesting talking point, and we'll keep up on that. Do you have any finishing thoughts at all for the episode?
Well, I have one thing to say that I actually just saw. It just came up on my ESPN app that I'll just say briefly that I just want to ask you this question because this is interesting. Really quickly, I just got a notification from ESPN saying that James Harden is a potential landing spot for Phoenix. Really quickly, do you think that would be a good setup for them? Reuniting Kevin Durant and James Harden for the third time in their career. Do you think that would work out?
I think it has potential to, but man, it's tough because there have been players across the league, James saying James Harden is a pretty toxic piece in the locker room. Do you want that in your locker room? I don't know if I would.
Nah, I
He's a
don't.
good basketball player. I'm not denying that. But I don't want any sort of toxicity in the locker room, so I don't think Phoenix is going to be looking at him for anybody to fill up on the roster. Especially if a team is looking to kind of get back off the ground and get back to where they were the last couple of years.
No, fair enough. I do think it would maybe be a better situation than Philadelphia. I don't think he'll stay a
Oh yeah.
76er, but I think he's going back to Houston. I think that's what's going to happen. So, but anyway, so yeah, that was just something that just came up. But no, as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Please, just one more thing I want to say really quick is thank you guys. TikTok, a lot of traffic from TikTok. I appreciate that. I'm going to make sure to post this this link to TikTok because that was a really nice jump. So make sure anyone from TikTok that watched our last episode, thank you. Thank you for watching this episode. Remember, you can always hit us up about what you want us to talk about on Twitter. We have an Instagram page that I'm going to start posting on, and then we also have Facebook as well as TikTok. So any of those outlets, you can always hit us up, debate with us, tell us what you want us to talk about. Hit us up. We're always willing to hear what you guys have to say to us.
Absolutely. Again, appreciate you guys all for listening and watching. And we will have more to talk about next time. So again, thank you all for listening.